All right. Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to Intercultural Spark. Today, we are going to be talking with MK Czerwiec and Sharon Rosenzweig. And I'm really excited because we often talk about communication technologies. And when we talk about communication technologies, it's usually literally like, what are those digital tools that we use to be able to communicate whether it's difficult topics or communicating, peer to peer or even across differences. And what we're looking at today is something called graphic medicine. And so MK is a nurse. She's a cartoonist. She's an educator. She's a co-founder of the field of graphic medicine and also the editor of a book called Menopause, a Comic Treatment. Sharon is an artist, cartoonist, educator, and has a piece included in the comic Menopause. So I'm delighted to welcome both of them today. We're going to learn all about graphic medicine and what that actually means as a communications medium. So welcome to Intercultural Spark. Hi, good morning.
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 How are you both? I'm so glad to have you both here today.
We're so excited to see each other, and you too.
It's true.
Yeah. Where are you guys both located? You're not in the same city, or you are in the same city? But I guess we don't get to see anybody now.
Yeah. No, I'm in Highland Park, Illinois, and MK's in Michigan, right? MK?
Yeah, I'm in Southwest Michigan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both for joining us today. And I probably had the same misconception, or maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm just, well, let's just pretend on behalf of our viewers that maybe I had the misconception. I always thought of comics as funny. And then, the idea came, well, let's do this show about, Menopause, a comic treatment. And of course, most people hear comic menopause and just want to crack jokes, which is actually the opposite of what we're talking about. And so, MK, I was really excited as I learned more to find out about graphic medicine as a communications technology, or basically a mode of communication. So could you just start by telling us what it is?
Yeah, so graphic medicine is a term that pretty much refers to everything that happens at the intersection of comics, the medium of comics, and health, illness, disability, thinking about our bodies. So basically anything, health and wellness related, and doing that work through comics, and then research about that, and also the act of drawing comics. So the reading and the drawing of comics around health and body.
Mm-hmm. And comics, though, we're using the term comics not as funny haha comics, but literally the art medium of drawings with words.
Right, the medium of sequential images that often incorporate text.
Okay, so that was I guess a different idea that I had, but it also seems like a good way to communicate things that might be difficult, like a way to sort of jumpstart communication. What are some of the topics that you write about? Or Sharon, maybe you want to look, because Sharon, so the piece that or the way that they originally came together, I guess you guys met doing the comic, Menopause, the comic treatment, correct?
No, we've known each other for some time. But we met when I did a presentation at Quimby's bookstore, and MK was like the MC of she ran this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies Do Comics, it was called. Really cool series. It was a lot of work for them though. Anyway, I showed the comic Torah and a bunch of other like Occupy Wall Street comics, but at the end I showed this piece that I'd done about my mom, and my mom was really deep into Alzheimer's and wasn't communicating, and I got her baby chicks, and I did a comic about this, getting her the chicks and how much it did for her. And MK recognized this piece as graphic medicine, which I'd never heard of. She told me about her website.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I was doing comics about caregiving, creative caregiving, which has become the theme of the last, I guess 8 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
So MK introduced me to this field that's really become the focus of my work.
Mm-hmm. So I'm actually just going to show this is from Menopause, a comic treatment, to give people an idea of what we're talking about. Is this sort of indicative, MK, would you say, as an example of understanding what graphic medicine is?
Right. So this is a wonderful piece by a cartoonist and artist named Maureen Burdock. And in it, she's talking about sort of the destigmatizing menopause and the sort of thinking of it in terms of ritual and ancient history and connection between the older women and the younger woman, and kind of bringing them together, and really just kind of what is sort of mythology around the period blood, and how do we sort of, as she draws there, recapture a sense of ourselves and our youth as we go through this, and also embrace the change that's coming as we go through this difficult time in our life. And Maureen is just an incredibly talented painter and does beautiful work. And then this piece is by Linda Berry, who's just a huge hero of mine. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece about being a little kid and listening to the older women talk about what menopause was, and that time in her life in the when they would give women hysterectomies and all that stuff. And then again, it's about embracing her younger self in the end. It's just a beautiful comic. But this, is an anthology of comics that look at this, one of the things that comics do incredibly well is challenge stigma. And the reason I wanted to do this collection was because as I was approaching these experiences and feeling these like crazy changes, even as a nurse, I realized I didn't know that much about menopause. We don't get taught about it. And it's like puberty in a weird way, in that like all of a sudden all these changes are happening and you're kind of freaking out and you don't know what's happening. And, you need to kind of get some resources. And when it came to resources in my medium of choice, comics, I found that mostly they were quite insulting, and they were just like, we were the butt of the joke. And so I just wanted to create a whole nother world. And so I, through graphic medicine and the Queers in Comics Conference, happened to know a ton of incredible human beings, cartoonists, scholars who were going through this stuff. And so I just put a call to people to say, just reflect on this and give me something. And it turned just into an amazing collection that I have to brag for a second, was actually named one of the New York Times top 10 graphic novels of last year, 2020. Even though it's not a graphic novel, it's an anthology, but you don't argue about that stuff.
Right. We'll take it. So that's wonderful. By the way, thank you everyone who's joining us live today. And if you're joining live, just a reminder that you can post questions in the comments, whether you're joining us from Facebook or YouTube. Please feel free to send those questions to us. What I found amazing, actually, there's funny, not all the pieces are funny. Like you said, they're very literal and get to depth of feeling. I did like the piece. There was a piece by Mimi Pond where she took on menopause as like a trip to the circus. And I like they're in the fun house with the mirrors, and the older woman's there with her daughter, and she looks in the mirror and she goes, "Wait, I'm invisible." Because so many times as women age, you literally become invisible.
There's another, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's another wonderful comic that works. There's another wonderful comic in the collection that works on that theme by Carol Tyler, where she actually finds a very creative way to take advantage of that invisibility and make it work to her advantage.
That's great. That's a lot of fun. But a lot of the pieces are extremely personal. Sharon, speaking of extremely personal, so talk about what your piece is. Actually, I can probably even pull that up. The piece that you put in Comic Menopause, why don't you tell us what that piece is about? Because it's very personal.
Yes. Can you put it up?
I can. By the way, that's the cover. We'll see how big we can get it, but yeah.
That's basically there.
That was it.
That was it.
Okay, there we go.
So I told my menopause story in this piece, and you're not gonna be able to see it unless you buy the book because it doesn't show up that well. But that's kind of what it looks like. And I had basically finished menopause right when I met my husband, which was, good timing in every way, except for this persistent issue of vaginal dryness, which was, just not good timing. But there's a happy ending to this story because eventually I discovered the right combination of drugs, which this bioidentical estriol has changed my life. And ask your doctor to prescribe it for you. It's like it's like a miracle thing.
Great, thank you from our sponsor.
Yeah. But so this is the story of how we, what happened in our relationship as we dealt with this issue. Because at first I tried different cocktails with these bioidenticals, and when they included testosterone, I reacted very badly to that, but I didn't understand what was going on. So really, I think for like the first 6 months of our relationship, I was angry all the time from this, from the testosterone. When I finally got back to my doctor and reported this, he said, "Oh, we have to just take that out of the mix." And everything was much better. Then eventually I found my way to this right thing. And, Aaron still has the bite marks, but we are about to celebrate our 18th anniversary. So,
congratulations.
It's a success story. There's a lot of good things about menopause. Like when I first heard about menopause, I just thought it was like the best thing to look forward to. I guess I heard about menopause at the same time I heard about menstruation. Menstruation seemed like a major design flaw, and menopause like an antidote to look forward to.
You know what I find amazing about this, though, and like you said, and of course the book is wonderful and includes a lot of these different stories. But even just seeing this on screen as this 2-page, graphic with drawings and words, is that how graphic medicine can take something really complex, really emotional. This covers a lot of depth, and yet you're able to convey it within this small space, and you've captured the emotion, but also actually the medical interventions that you did, how it impacted your relationship. There's a lot going on, and it strikes me that graphic medicine is a way of being able to do that. So
I'd like to point out that this is actually incredibly pornographic, but you would never know that unless you put the energy into looking hard. If you look hard, you're sort of rewarded. Your patience and persistence is rewarded by, complete X-rated stuff. But it would never be censored because it's quite hidden. And
oh my gosh, I'll have to do a deeper read for sure.
Are abstracted such that you can have intercourse on the page and nobody knows it.
And nobody notices.
Facebook wouldn't take it down. You have to actually see.
That's great. So another benefit of graphic medicine as a medium for communication.
I had not thought of that one.
What's interesting, what is also fascinating is I know that you, MK, actually teach graphic medicine at medical schools like Northwestern, University of Illinois. So how does the medical profession embrace graphic medicine?
What's interesting is I've been quite surprised the degree to which it has been embraced. I think it's a combination of things. One is that it's a way, so the field that I'm educated in, my master's is in medical humanities and bioethics. And it's a wonderful way to bring the humanities into the medical school curriculum. It's one of the many ways that medical schools do that. And so it's been embraced. And also, I think part of it is, we live in a very visual society. And so we bring the images, we bring the visuals, we bring kind of all the advantages that using images and text in combination bring. And so we've been embraced, but it's not just about being enthusiastic. Medicine and healthcare is research-based. And so we have to make sure that, for example, in medical school, our students are actually learning the content we want them to learn. So there has to be a good, strong, didactic, curriculum and all that stuff. So, but we've been able, the people who do this kind of work, I'm not the only one, but the people who do this work are kind of well positioned to put all those things together.
And I'm seeing that I saw just in looking that I saw one book that was in Japanese, some are in Spanish. How is it embraced internationally? How does it differ from country to country?
Yeah, that's really interesting. What's been, again, it's been an amazing, 13-year ride since I've been doing this. It's been my full-time job. I think part of it was there were a number of people all over the place who were doing comics in healthcare, but they were kind of keeping it quiet. They were like, didn't want to deal with the stigma or their colleagues thinking they weren't serious scholars or whatever.
Is that what you mean by the stigma? Like that people will think that they're not looking at their medical information seriously.
Yeah, that's not serious, that comics are for kids and comics are for children who don't, understand. And that comics also are or the other stigma is that they're just silly stories or superheroes, right? And we stand on the shoulders of Mouse, right? The first graphic novel that told a very serious, very intense story. It was also sort of research-based. It was an oral history, but yet it used this medium to its power. But
it used the medium to tell the story of the Holocaust.
Exactly, right. It's a very serious story. Right. So we stand on the shoulders of that. But to your question about international movements, so there's actually the largest international community is in Spanish, so Medicina Grafica, and they have their own website, which we link to on ours, and they do all kinds of work in that area. In fact, they've now developed a master's degree in graphic medicine that's currently being taught. But there's also a site in Japanese that you can get to from our site. Of course, in Japan, there's a long history of using manga as an educational tool, and I think maybe not as much of the stigma. But perhaps some. And then also we have colleagues who are scholars throughout India who are using graphic medicine. There's Medicina Grafica's site, which is run by predominantly, there's a wonderful group of scholars there. Predominantly, this site is run by an emergency medicine doctor who's also a cartoonist named Monica Lalanda.
And do they try to translate comics? It feels like comics would be hard to translate. Or are these all original comics that are created originally in Spanish language?
Mostly, I think their work is comics who were originally created in Spanish. I wish that some of the books they have would be translated to English, but they've translated some of our books as well. But mostly they've got their own wonderful tradition of this work that is really exploding right now.
That's fantastic. Just speaking along, and it's exciting to see clearly it was needed actually, even in the comics and the comments as we were promoting the show. I know someone who had diabetes wrote in that they had no idea that this was actually a thing. They were just dealing with their own emotions related to having diabetes. So that it was exciting, I guess, maybe for people to latch onto something. Did you find that you found that there were people working in this medium but didn't know it was, quote, a thing?
Absolutely. I mean, we call that your graphic medicine eureka moment, and people continue to have them every day.
Okay.
And I love when that happens, especially look at diabetes. There's some wonderful full graphic novels for adults and teens and kids about diabetes. My theory on this is that, when you're under a lot of stress and there's a lot to be learned, and it's really important that you learn it. That's when comics are the best intervention. Like you imagine, being discharged from the hospital after you've maybe broke your leg or something, getting a sheet of paper as discharge instructions. I just think, and I'm a nurse, I can say this, I just think it doesn't serve someone who's really stressed out because it's hard to read solid blocks of text. But yet those were, efficiently organized image and text in combination sequentially. That's a comic. That's a really great way to kind of increase patient absorption of the information that they need to take good care of themselves and their loved ones.
Well, especially because, I mean, you're actually speaking marketing language now. How do you get people to consume messages? And it's that eighth of a second when they look at something. What do they see and what does it convey? So.
Yeah, and you look back at Sharon's thing. You get, the great thing about a comic is you can look at a page and you get a gestalt for, I see the chaos there and I see that it ends in a peaceful moment, right? Or you think about Maureen's, like you just saw that red, like you get this feel for the content and then you can engage with it on a deeper level if you want.
It's funny actually with the one that focuses on the blood, that personification of the blood. It's like the thing that nobody wants to talk about. And yet, Sharon, you notice the connection, like from menstruation all the way through menopause. Nobody talks about that, but that is at the core of what it is actually, is that funny? Is that the core of what being a woman, our experience of life, and yet it conveyed it so quickly there. Sharon, you called yourself, just along the lines of a comic, you have called yourself an investigative comic. What does that mean?
That means like looking deeper into things through
Mhm.
comics, using comics to explore a topic. But when originally I called myself that when I was doing work around Occupy Wall Street and Occupy Chicago. I was just very interested in this. I went and drew the occupants and talked to them about what brought them out, like why they were doing this, why were they going to all this trouble. And I made comics I made like I think like 100 comics. I went to New York too and did this for 3 days there, and
Wow.
I really enjoyed that, just hearing people's stories and making them into like a shareable format.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Something about having the images, not a photograph, but having a drawn, composed image, um, makes the person real in a very
Mhm.
different way. So everybody would cooperate with this. Like everybody I approached to ask this wanted to tell their story and didn't mind sitting for me to draw them and
That's
photograph them.
fantastic.
Um, yeah, they were shared. That was like one of a big success in terms of they went around the world. And
Mhm.
I was part of a community of other. I can't remember what we had a name, but I can't remember what. But Occupy Wall Street organized like shows and collections online
Mhm.
of all kinds of
Wow.
work we're doing. There was a lot of different artwork being done.
Mhm.
Uh,
It makes a
so
lot of sense though, because when you're oh, I'm sorry, what'd you say? I cut you off.
Well,
Tell me what you said.
that was why I was calling myself an
Mhm.
investigative cartoonist. But I still feel like the work I'm doing is investigative, but it's
Mhm.
internal.
Mhm. Well, except that I would say that when you look at a photo, we're conditioned when we look at a photograph to see what is the center thing. If it's a portrait, you look at the person, you don't always look at all the detail of what's behind them. Whereas if it's an intentional drawing, you know that everything in that composition has been put in intentionally. So I think you do look a little bit closer. We're going to jump to, I can't believe how quickly our time is going. We are going to go to a section of the show called Flash Photo Stories. All right. One day I'm going to actually get like a real jingle, but wait, I didn't just sing that.
I
That was
like
professionally done. That was not me behind the camera singing.
that.
So what we do here though is because I know that when I have guests on the show that these are these amazing, deep, complex people who have so much to share. We have such a short period of time and we want to get as much knowledge as we can to share with our viewers in a short period of time. And so the flash photo stories, both Sharon and MK have sent me photos ahead of time and I'm going to flash them up and they're going to tell me what they are. So Sharon, this one is yours.
It is. So I want to say about this that sometimes graphic medicine is therapy for the practitioner.
Mhm.
And after my mom died, I went through a period where I really couldn't draw. And when I wanted to start drawing again, I used Lind Berry, who we mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
cartoonist who also teaches cartooning at Madison. Um, she has this exercise where you put you make a mark and then you make a spiral around that mark and you keep the lines as close together as you can without touching, because if they touch, you get electrocuted. And
Mhm.
this is she's just using it as a warm up to relax you and focus you, and it did that for me in a big way. And then I got this surprise at the end of the drawing that there was a whole new space that had opened up. Instead of a flat page, there's this
Oh,
very
interesting.
suggestive space that's not like the normal space that we live in. But
Mhm.
anyway, it invited characters. So I would put characters in them, and I made one every day starting January 1st of 2017, and I would put it on
Mhm.
Facebook. And over time, other images came in there. Like I started using other things for reference for these images, including my old drawings for this graphic novel I'm working on.
Mhm.
Uh, so actually, there's another uh, i- um, image I included to show what one of the later drawings looked like when I this is it. So this method, using the spirals, allowed me to access things that were really deep and troubling and put them onto the page. Like it provided an exit route for my emotions that came up as I was drawing. Uh, so this is about my mother's death and about how I drew her out. Like had been drawing my mother every day while she was dying. I would go and make drawings of her and her caregivers. And when she was dying, it was just me and her caregiver who were there. But I just sat on her bed and drew her until she stopped breathing, and then I stopped drawing. So this is a comic about that. It's interesting. Let me think here. It's like the emotions that would normally be stuck in me were allowed to come out onto the page. Then they have an independent life of their own. Like the drawing becomes like a shareable medium, so the things can leave me and then go out in the world, and I don't have to hold on to them anymore. It was a way of processing my grief that was very effective for me.
It also, I recall reading somewhere that it also gave you a sense of purpose or calm while you were sitting with your mom. So that it was actually almost even something to do, if that makes sense, while you were being present for her.
Completely. I could have been knitting, but this was a way to
Sure.
Because I was using this method called blind contour, where you put your pencil down on the page and you put your eye on their subject, my mom, so say I'm on her nose. And then as I move my eye, I move my pencil. So I'm not looking at the drawing, I'm only looking at my mom. And
Interesting. Wow.
You would go into places, it feels like you're touching your mom. So I'm like going up her nose and it connects you in this very visceral way.
Wow. By the way, thank you so much for Patricia, who's here. Patricia was going back when MK, when you said we stand on the shoulders of mouse, I can't help but think menopause, that those letters repeated there.
Nice, Pat. Nice.
Which actually, that was something that was fun too. The piece about atrophy versus trophy, like the woman who was used a graphic medicine to give her uterus a trophy for how well she had served, but then also playing the word atrophy, because you think of that sort of what's happening as you get older.
Yes, that's the wonderful. That's the wonderful artist Rachel House. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about this one.
So this is a panel from my book, Taking Turns, which is basically part of my origin story as a cartoonist. I was working as a nurse during the AIDS crisis in Chicago, and I was not the kid who could draw. I started making comics as a way to survive that very difficult experience. And exactly what Sharon just said, it was a place to put things, a place to process and try to understand things, was I started making comics. And this later, I turned all of that into a story and put it out as a graphic memoir. And this is a panel from that. This is one of my patients, and it's at sort of a pivotal point in the narrative of the book. And this I can remember so clearly someone saying this to me. And so what this panel demonstrates, I use this when I teach often, is that one of the reasons comics are so great is they give us access to things across different time frames, right? So Sharon can draw her mother in the panel, even when her mother's no longer with us, right? So we can have past, present, and future all in one panel of a comic. This is an example of how we can have what is said and what is unsaid all in the panel of a comic. Comics give us access to things that we wouldn't normally be able to do. And we take great advantage of that in graphic medicine.
And it seems like any, is it fair to say that anybody can do this? Like go ahead.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, that is not a sophisticated drawing style. And I have a graphic memoir that's being used in classrooms all over the world. So, yeah, you can do it. And part of it is I make up for what I lack in the ability to draw 3D with, that's the cover of my book, with color. And so it's just about finding your style. Like I said, I was not the kid at school who could draw. In fact, I was told not to. And I picked it up out of necessity. And and then you just find your style. You just keep going until you feel like you've found a style that is yours. And then you just do everything you can do to just keep doing that work.
Which I did not mean to laugh when you said you told you were not to. It reminded me of singing to my son like every day. And then when he could finally talk, he looked at me and goes, "Don't sing, mommy." But I know that sometimes that idea of saying don't draw can actually get people to stop drawing. And and so whatever. It is. Well, and I'm hearing both of you, Sharon, the exercise you talked about of putting your pencil down and then not looking at your drawing, but looking at what you're drawing and moving as your eyes move. I know I work with a client who's a grandparenting activist, and we have like 400 grandparents across the country right now writing writing stories, and it's the same thing. You get a prompt and then you put your pencil down. You're not allowed to take it up for 10 minutes. Like you just have to keep going no matter what. So, yeah. Well, I am so excited that both of you are here today. I've learned so much. It's fascinating. It really sounds like a fun, expressive way to communicate. And I even sent out, I do a newsletter and said, if you're having trouble crafting your message, change your media and maybe try approaching things from a different way. And it can sort of explode how you think. So speaking of looking at things from a different way, I always close the show with an exercise of the day. And so I'm going to ask both of you to do this with me. And it is a way to rethink how you do drawing. All right. Now, this is probably going to be a disaster. Things may fall because this is the first time I'm trying to turn around and have you join me like in my exercise studio. So I'm going to ask, I know. I'll have this like done with like high-tech special effects soon. But for now, it's very manual. It's very manual. Let's try this. So we're going to stand up. You're going to join me as we do our flash exercise. All right, that's the part where everything just fell. All right. Well, okay, so we'll figure out the little parts that we have to move. But I was pretty excited about this exercise of the day because it has to do with, it's an oblique exercise. Obliques are for your core, and it's an oblique exercise that you can draw. So I actually put on my board, you can see that big sort of figure 8. All right, so when you do this at home, you can grab your markers, take the lid. This is how we do the exercise. Grab your markers, take the lids off. All right. Come with your feet under your hips and then go heel toe wider left, heel toe wider right. If you have a dress on, hike it up. Come into just a slight squat and then bring your tail back and your chest up. So you're in a squat, brace your core. What you're going to do is you take your markers, you put them straight out in front of you, shoulder height. If you had headlights on your hips, don't let your headlights have them shine straight forward. You rotate at your chest. So you can go side, side. Oh, you got it. Perfect. Rotating at the chest. Or to get your obliques, you go to the side. Now come down to your thigh, other thigh, and back up. So keep your chest forward. There you go. Side. That's it. And then up, up. So the way that it works, if you're drawing, is you would squat and you go side, down, up.
Oh, okay. You're making an X.
Exactly. By using that exercise. So there you go. So that is your oblique exercise drawer. And in honor of, that's a new way to approach how you draw.
I love it. Nice work. Very well challenged.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for being here and sharing this information. I can't wait to try it now. I love different ways to just communicate complex subjects. And
we want to see some comics.
You want to see my comics? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
All right. I'll have to. What's your next anthology? Maybe I'll start with Menopause or maybe something. I don't know.
You can make a suggestion.
Huh?
You can suggest a topic.
Oh, fantastic. So I don't know. Mine probably would be something I do along that lines of it probably exercise related, like something about doing jumping jacks post menopause.
Alison Bechdel is an amazing, award-winning, magnificent graphic novelist, and her next book that's coming out is going to be about exercise. And
what's her name?
Alison Bechdel.
Alison Bechdel.
Bechdel. She did a book
fun.
That became like a play and everything. She's really famous.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll include all those, any other resources too for people to share. I'll include in the comics so that people can follow up afterwards. MK, Sharon, thank you so much for spending this time with Intercultural Spark today. One last quick question. It's not really a quick one, but I'm going to ask you sort of in a quick way. Is there a spark? When we talk about the spark, there's often that thing that's inside you that kind of draws you to all the different work that you do. If you could put that in 1 or 2 words, what would you say your spark is?
Surprise, see what happens next. The work always surprises. you find out by doing what you think. You know, you learn from doing.
I totally get that. Yes. MK, what about for you?
I would have to say joy, like even in finding ways to find joy, even in the face of very difficult things like dying and death and the difficult topics that these books tackle. I often find joy in the joy of the process of creation.
I love it. Those are both really fantastic. I can see as jumping points for spark and change in life. Thank you for everyone who joined us live. MK, Sharon, thank you again. And we'll see you next week on Intercultural Spark.
Thank
you.